Sometimes those are a little more cozier than the chairs. So thanks for everyone being flexible. If anyone didn't get a entree, the staff is walking around. So make sure did you get an entree over there? Do you need one? Okay. Sorry. Well, if I'll definitely make sure you get an entree. It's really hard with all the lights for me seeing out. So I'm super excited about our keynote speakers today. Today I have two keynote speakers. I have Pat Benoit, who is the Chief Information Security Officer at Brink. For those of you that were here last year, you may remember him. He sat on our CISO panel. And previously, he served as an advisory CISO and Global Business Information Security Officer for CBRE and the Deputy CISO for Cheetah Digital. He's an information cybersecurity privacy executive, writer, speaker, knowledge provider, seeker. Everyone in Dallas probably already knows him and is familiar with him. And you guys are very lucky to have such great leaders in Dallas. I also have David Belanger, who's the Chief Security Officer from Bestow. He's currently, he was formerly the Chief Information Security Officer at Maxer National Pharmacy Services for a few decades. Dave has served in the information security roles in healthcare, public safety connections, telecom industries for more than 9 years on the front lines of companies serving technology. And today we are going to have a chat with them, and they are going to chat on you're a CISO, can you hack it? And I do want to let you know, if you have questions, we would love to have you guys participate, but please make sure you raise your hand and my tech team will bring a mic to you, because we want to make sure that our virtual attendees can hear your question. And for our virtual attendees, if you have any questions, please put them in the chat box and we will make sure that we are communicating your questions to our two speakers as well. So everyone, let's welcome Pat and David.
Yeah, we're mic'd up. Thank you, Kim. Thank you, Kim, for asking us to do this. Really appreciate it. Excited to be at FutureCon again. Thank all of you for being here and everybody online. It's very, very, very exciting, and it's a great venue. So Pat Benoit. Good to see you again.
Thanks. Good to be here.
It's been a while. Some changes in your life recently,
a little bit.
Before we get to that, why don't we start with a little bit of your background,
Sure.
How you came up to be a CISO, where you started, and then then we'll get into where you are now.
So I'll make as short a story as I can, because my career has spanned multiple decades. So I'm either vintage or antique, depending on how you look at it. Ex-military, had my own consulting company for years and years, 15, 16 years in technology. Came up through the software developer ranks, infrastructure ranks. For many, many, many years, I had the title of like VP IT and security. So I had both. For a long time. And finally in 2015, I was helping to build an executive business partner program at Experian. 3 of us were building it, and that was basically what we now call a BISO, or a business information officer and a business information security officer put together. During that time, it occurred to me that if you look at the number of technology executives compared to security specific executives, it's a big difference. I mean, I don't know what the real number is. I'm going to guess maybe it's 10 to 1, but regardless. So as that pipeline starts to narrow as you get to executive ranks, you're talking about on the IT side, you're narrowing 10 people to 1 versus 1 to 1. So it was obvious to me that there's a much greater likelihood to be a specialist in cybersecurity and become an executive and have a prolonged career that way. I wouldn't be fighting the same kind of fight. So really in 2015, I said, look, I've been doing this security stuff for a bunch of years, running it, leading it, but I haven't had a security specific title. So, did my CISSP, did my CSM, did my CISO, did CRIS, did yada, 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 all kinds of acronyms, and left Experian with one of their divestitures as a deputy CISO to build a security program because they divested with no security people at all. So did that for a while, and then got the role at CBRE. They wanted me to come build a BISO program for them. And after about a year of building out that program, they also then offered me the opportunity to lead global governance risk compliance for the company too. And did that for about 3 years before I took this role.
So it's interesting because I know so many CISOs and CSOs, including myself, who came up through the ranks of traditional technology roles and then swung over into the security world. In exactly the same way, I reached a point in my career I made a conscientious decision. CISSP, you get the certs and then you start focusing on that path.
Right.
At the time I did that, there were not a lot of formal educational courses in security. It was certifications, and even the ones that started to develop, like Western Governor, those types of things, they were really primarily based on getting a certification anyway as part of their program. That's changing now, and colleges are offering proprietary courses on specific to cybersecurity.
Right.
So do you think that's changing? Do you think the CISO tomorrow will be educated differently?
Well, I think there's always an evolution. We saw the evolution of the CIO where they were directors of IT for a long time, reported to CFO, et cetera, and then eventually they proved their business savvy, they proved their business acumen, and then they got a seat at the table and they became peers to the CFO. And CISO, in my mind, is kind of going the same direction. Mm-hmm. Currently, I think the number I saw was 65%-ish or so of CISOs report to a CIO or a CTO, to the tech leader. However, we have the financial institutions primarily that have jumped up, and now on their audits for compliance, they are saying that's a conflict of interest. Mm-hmm. Because you're reporting issues, vulnerabilities that generally have to do with your boss. And that's not a good thing because it could be, there may not be the transparency that you need. So there's a big push to move the CISO out from underneath that. To your education thing, I still believe that the best way to educate yourself, I use a 70-20-10 rule. So 70% of what you learn and the experience is based in experience and on-the-job training and working with somebody in that role, working your way up, seeing it happen for yourself. 20% of it to me is a mentoring kind of scenario. Mm-hmm. Somebody's actually helping walk you through that, and they're talking you through, and you're going to conferences and you're seeing things like this. And 10% is really the formal education. So will that flip-flop? I don't know that that'll flip-flop because I don't know how you educate a CISO that is just coming out of college, because so much of it is business. And you can take MBAs all day long, but they still do not understand the reality of business in the real world. They understand the theory. And so we always say theoretically correct and practically useless.
Yeah. So it's interesting, and I want to get back to your career real quick. Just one comment is, all the CISOs in the circles that we travel in all have war stories.
Oh yeah.
They've all gained knowledge and experience. It's been trial by fire, and I think that's a key element. We can talk about that a little bit further. I think there's a key element to being a good CISO, and that's having lived through these incidents that forge you, give you that background. And it's kind of like, if you don't touch the hot stove to know enough not to touch it as a kid, then you learn these experiences. You learn where the pain is, and I think it's the same for CISOs. So you were at CBRE. Mm-hmm. The last time that we really got to visit was back in October at another conference.
Yes.
And at that time, you had just accepted your position at Brink's.
Right.
So tell us a little bit about your position at Brink's, what it is, and how did you come upon it? I think people will be interested in how CISOs land their jobs.
Yeah,
tell us a little about that.
This is the shameless plug for conferences, for FutureCon, is that the former CISO, I happened to be at a conference, and in last May, and I went in to go have breakfast before the conference, and the former CISO of Brinks happened to be in there too, and we're friends, and I knew him, and he sat down and we were having breakfast, and he said, I'm leaving. Would you be interested? Well, one of my basic rules is never to answer a question I haven't been asked yet. So nobody offered me a job, so of course I'm not going to say no. And so I said, sure, I'm always interested. He said, I'll put your name in and they'll reach out to you. They did. 4-ish months, so September now, May to September, and 18 interviews with executives, and they made me an offer. So many people, when I say that, go, 18 interviews? I said, yeah, so I was either the right candidate or I was the last person standing. I just kept coming back, and they figured that was persistent enough that we're going to hire you. So, and that's how I got to that point.
So you got your job through two factors, somewhere you were and somewhere you know.
That's right, okay. Guys. That's 2-factor job hunting. Yes.
Good.
Yes,
good
absolutely.
So now tell us what's your title there, and tell us a little bit about what you're responsible for.
So I'm the Global Chief Information Security Officer, and one of the early things I did is I kind of have a model for that team that looks like there's a big split in the world of cybersecurity between the GRC side and the technical side, engineering, ops, however you want to look at it. So I tend to break down in GRC is everything that doesn't fall into the other two. The other two are architecture and engineering. These are my smartest people in the world on the team, and they tell me what I should or shouldn't be doing technically, and they make sure that we're going in the right direction, and road mapping and support and all that stuff like that for all of our controls. And then I have security operations and threat management. And these are the saviors of the world because they are 24/7 watching our backs, looking at things, making sure everything's working, running the GSOC, going out and searching for threats and trying to get it before it gets to us. So that's kind of what my team looks like. And then I have an ace in the hole. My architecture person was the interim CISO. So for 5 months, he got to keep the lights on. And what most people don't realize is everybody goes, oh, you got to be an interim CISO. That's really cool. Yeah, kind of, but you have no authority. You can't do anything because every time you go ask about doing something, the CIO or whoever you report to is going to say, that might be a good idea, but let's wait to see what the new CISO wants to do. Well, you say that enough times and you look up and it's 5 months later, the team is demoralized because they have no direction. They're worried about their job, what's going to happen, and we're not doing anything in the world. We don't have a program. So he did an amazing job just kind of holding it together, keeping the wheels on the bus and making sure that it lasted for that long. And that's why the very first thing I did when I got in within the first 2 or 3 weeks was I called him in and I said, you did a great job. If you will accept it, I want to change your title to Deputy CISO. Because he needed to be recognized for that. And frankly, I need a right hand. I need somebody that can stand in for me whenever I'm at a conference, for example.
So challenge number one is the human element. So let's dig into
Absolutely.
that, because when you start a new CISO job, there are prescribed methods for your first 90 days, right? And I want to talk to you a little bit about that. But before we get there are challenges that you're not necessarily prepared for till you get in and you see the landscape and you understand the culture and you get to the people. How do you cover some of the people problems and how you dealt with them?
Sure. Well, obviously, when you first walk in, too, the first thing is you have to start to establish strategy and build confidence in people stuff. But yes, it was evident to me immediately that we had a morale problem on the team. I had lost. I didn't start till November 1st, but in the last quarter of last year, because of all of this uncertainty, the team lost 9 people in that last 3 months of the quarter, that last quarter. So, on a 44-ish person team, that's a huge hit of people all at once.
So just real quick to interject, you lost those people. Those people left because they weren't
left on their
afraid
own,
of uncertainty.
They're afraid of uncertainty,
okay.
Yeah. And when you're afraid of uncertainty, it's not hard for cybersecurity folks to find a new place to live. It just isn't. So, key to what I had to do was make sure to stabilize the team while we're keeping the lights on, stabilize the team, get them assured that I care about them, because as far as I'm concerned, if they don't know that you care about them and you're going to try and do something to help them, then they will find someplace else. The absolute is people leave leaders before they leave companies. So, the leader has to show that the people are number one. Have to keep mission in mind. You have to, there are fair things. You can't put people ahead of the mission, but you can make them understand that you're doing what you can to care for them while you're doing the mission. So that was the first order of business.
Good, excellent. So you have 9 open positions right now?
No, well, no, because so day 2, I presented my strategic plan for 2023 to my CIO. I report to CIO. And he said, this is great. I love this. That's a great plan. This is what we need to do. And then he said, but I have a little bit of a challenge for you. You need to cut 30% out of your budget. I went, okay, fair enough. And so I went back, and on day 3, I gave him a new budget that cut 30% out. And in doing that, I had to not backfill some positions that were already gone. Didn't have to really cut anybody, but not backfill positions. I had to move a bunch of money around on applications, products that I didn't think we were effectively using, and did some things like that, and went back to them and said, here's your 30%. The good news is, I think, because of that transparency, because I worked so well with trying to take care of the team that way, the ending budget gave me back about 20 or 25% of that 30. So what I was able to do as part of that plan was hire back 7 people out of the 9.
Good for you.
A lot of that came through contractor conversions. We had a bunch of contractors in our GSOC and stuff. Well, when I convert a contractor, I save money because I lose the fee. I do gain the benefits, but I lose the fee. And net, I probably gain 5 or 10% on the deal.
So how many open positions do you have right now?
Right now, I have 1 U.S. GSOC level 2 position, 2 in Romania, and then 2 in Manila that I'm filling.
Okay, so local
The others
to the
I got
States?
filled.
One?
One local
Okay.
to the States.
And is it on your website?
It is.
Brink's?
It's on LinkedIn also.
It's on LinkedIn? Okay,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
if anybody's looking, you can
Oh, yeah,
talk
definitely.
with Pat after the show and get connected.
Well, I mean, feel free to ping me on LinkedIn and send me your resume on LinkedIn, and I'll get it into the system for you. You'll still end up having to apply at some point, but I'll get it in for you. The other positions, I was lucky. I have good people on the team. We did a lot of work. My deputy and I did a lot of work at looking at, well, we have this security engineering manager position as an example. Is there anybody on the team qualified for that? Well, yes, we have this person over here that's a level 3 engineer that has had some prior leadership experience as a lead, and he's very motivated. He works real well on customer calls and everything else like that. I said, okay, fine. You interview him and make a decision. If y'all interview him and say that he's the right person, let's move him to that position, and then we'll hold and not backfill the one he had, because I still need some extra money to play with this year. So we did that. So we got to promote one person within. I picked up a team of 10 from a pure IT VP who, for some reason, we had IT risk and cyber risk split into 2 teams. One belonged to cyber, to me, and one belonged to another VP in IT that had shared services. We had a conversation. He goes, this doesn't make any sense. Why don't we put them together? I said, that's great. Where do you want it to be? He said, I think you have the risk background. You take it. So I brought 10 people over. But in doing that, I lost, one of those 9 people I lost was one of my directors that was doing the cyber risk. So I was able to then say, okay, I have a person that's doing governance for that IT risk team. Let's promote her and make her in charge of the whole governance section of my program, which includes security awareness and some other things like that. And get her promoted, get her money, and all that stuff like that. So that was an internal promotion. I had another conversion. We were short an IAM manager. Same deal. We interviewed him, looked at him, and he was picked and qualified for the IAM manager. Got to promote them from within. So we did a lot of that, which is obviously a huge boost to morale. So
That leads to my next question, which it's important to promote from within. But when you're a new CISO and you're starting a new job and you have staff like that, you have to take into consideration what's going through their mind. They don't know you. They don't know the human side, what your personality is. So what are some of the things you do to make your new staff feel comfortable with you?
Yeah.
Second half of that question is, what advice do you have for somebody who finds themselves in a situation where a new CISO is coming in? What can they do to make themselves more comfortable and to demonstrate themselves in a positive light to the new CISO?
Yeah, there's probably I can give you like 3 or 4. It's a lot of stuff, but it has to do with just the general nature, but 3 or 4 things that would probably work out. So one is, I've been preaching for years, security leaders must be sales leaders. So if you're going to go be a security leader, and I don't care at what level you're going to be a security leader, you're going to be a director or above, go study sales techniques. Go study how to tell a story. If you can't tell a story, then you're going to have a hard time being an executive in any area, let alone in security. Because the executives on the ELT team and the board, they don't want to hear stories about, I blocked this many vulnerabilities, et cetera, et cetera. They want to hear stories about how it impacts their business. So you have to learn to tell a story. So that's one. To get ready. That probably answered your last question first. But some of the things I do with the team immediately whenever I start is I have obviously a big in-person team meeting, in-person, online, however it works out. And I tell them some of my philosophies. One is, I noticed that vendors were scheduling their recurrent meetings at lunchtime. And I said, that's craziness. That doesn't make any sense whatsoever. That's your time. So the first thing I want y'all to do is to take that hour for your lunchtime and block it permanently on your calendar. Now, the other thing I want you to do is take an hour a day and block it permanently on your calendar for professional development, reading, catching up, whatever you want. It's your time. Now, if you choose to overlay that time, that's on you. You can adjust it, you can move it, you can overlay it, you can do whatever you want with it. But don't come back to me and tell me that you didn't have time to do this because you made the decision. So I put that decision back on them, which gives them some control of their day, hopefully. We all know that that's not 100%.
By doing so, you were protecting them.
I'm protecting them, and they see me protecting them.
Exactly. Yeah.
The other thing, frankly, is you have to kind of take a casual, 2 more things. You have to take a casual, in my view, you have to take a kind of a casual view to somebody coming to you and saying, well, I've got to be gone tomorrow because of this family thing or this doctor thing or whatever. My response is always, yeah, okay, whatever. You guys are doing enough work. You figure it out. I should not worry about that stuff unless I see productivity or some kind of projects not getting done or whatever. So I have to portray that. Third, I give them my, I have 4 rules to live by, and I teach the team, every team I have, I teach this. So number 1, always operate with the highest integrity. So honesty in everything, even if it hurts, okay? Number 2 is, nothing is personal. So when Dave comes into work and tells me an idea is stupid or rants and raves, not being disrespectful, but rants and raves or is obviously frustrated, it's not about me. It's about Dave. Nothing is personal. It's about Dave. Dave's got something going on in the back of his head. That's where we might have a conversation on the side. Dave, what's going on? Something going on in your life? Why are you acting this way? So number 3.
You get them to know.
You got to know them.
On a personal level. Yeah.
Number 3 is don't make assumptions. Okay? Gather the facts, talk to people, get the information, and make an informed decision. But never just make an assumption about something. And the 4th one is always do your best. If you're always doing your best, I'm not sure I can ask for anything more. If your best doesn't match what I need out of the job, then we need to have a conversation about finding a place where your best is right for the job that you're in. But it's not a bad thing. It's just the way it is. So those are the kinds of things you do. You protect them. The last everybody will like because we have the COVID remote hybrid work in the office discussion, right? I'm so sick of that discussion. So when it came to me about what's the rules, I asked all of my peer VPs and said, what's the rules? And they were like, well, back in the summer, there was a soft guidance that said 2 or 3 days in the office, but it's not really enforced and nobody really talks about it. And I said, okay, cool. So I made the rule. If nobody above me is going to make the rule, then I'll make the rule. And my rule was, if you live within 50 miles of the office and there's a big meeting or a big social event and we need to see your face, then I'm going to let you know, and I'd expect you to come in unless you have something that prevents that real. Otherwise, my senior directors, I said, you guys and girls work on finding a day, maybe 2 days, but probably no more than 2 days a month, where you set up those days and everybody within 50 miles comes in. And we'll do a group lunch in the cafeteria, and we'll be able to sit and talk to each other and walk around or whatever. That's it. The rest of the time, get your work done, and I don't care. So that may be the in-between of stay at home all the time if you want, but it's that opportunity to do that. But there was a cost to the employee. The cost to an employee is, if I let you do this, then by golly, you better get up in the morning, shower, shave, whatever it takes, put clothes on, and turn your camera on when we're on a Zoom call. That's the only thing I'm asking you to do to work from home. Now, sometimes you won't be able to, but...
So you require your employees
Yes, turn
to
it on.
shower.
Well, I don't care if they shower, because I can't smell it through
Get
the
up,
camera, so
shower,
I
get
don't
up.
care. That's just an example, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
I don't even care if they wear hats to cover the bad hair. Whatever they do, just show the camera so I can see your face, I can see your interaction, and we can work together.
So it's interesting. I mean, the people side is so important too, because
absolutely.
I think you know, a lot of people who want to be managers don't understand there's a difference between managing and leading. And when you lead people, you can't treat them like resources. You need to treat them like people. And like you were saying earlier, you understand who they are and what, because a person who develops a sense of loyalty to you personally, as long as you're in that role, they in effect have a loyalty to the company and are more effective, which means you need to allow them the downtime that they need to go to appointments or to recover from being ill, so that they come back, they can be just as effective.
Oh, yeah.
And then you can retain them, because retention can be a real problem.
It's cheaper than hiring.
Yeah, and so
It's cheaper than hiring, yeah.
in filling positions, and you know, it's easier to retain them than try to find them. There's a lot of talk, and I don't want to beat a dead horse. Cyber skills gap.
Yeah.
The shortage. Do you think it exists? Have you experienced it in dealing with these people problems that you've...
The only time I experience it is if I'm trying to get kind of senior level or higher level folks on the team. It oftentimes will take longer to find candidates, but then you know, you kind of have to expand your pool of resources that are searching, your recruiting pool. My kind of philosophy though is cyber folks, frankly, get paid much better than your typical system admins, let's say running a server and stuff like that. That ain't anything but a fact. And so if I'm going to pay that premium for somebody, then why would I want them doing what I would consider tier 1 tasks on an endpoint or something like that? So I always operate to elevate my team in cyber to at least tier 2, tier 3, tier 4, and then I will take all the tier 1 tasks that I can, and I will outsource them to my IT shared services, to my service desk, or I'll go look for MSSP. That way, I don't have to worry about hiring any of those level 1 folks. I can focus on retaining the smaller number of those that are my more senior and more qualified, experienced people. It's just my philosophy.
Yep. And there's a common problem that I've seen where companies don't have a structure, a career advancement structure in place, specifically in cybersecurity. And a lot of people, you know, they want to stay in the career they're in, and they will reach a point, and it's always been this way in IT, where you're an engineer, and once you reach senior systems engineer, you're done unless you want to go over into management. And not everybody is suited for management, and not everybody wants to transition into management. So you need to have a career progression path. Is that something that that you've developed, and how do you just
Oh, yeah.
layer in more levels to provide
Well,
that
fortunately,
advancement?
politically, it was easy to do, but I would have done that in the first 30 days, except we had holidays. I'm telling you, the best time to start a new job is November 1st. You work for 3 weeks, take a week off, work for 3 weeks, and take another week off. It's amazing. But yeah, the very first thing I did is I looked at it and I saw all this disparity amongst titles or people in cyber. And I'm like, I'm sorry, I'm not smart enough to make sense of who's on first like that. So I laid in the taxonomy, very simple. You know, I have cyber risk analysts, I have cybersecurity engineers, and I have cyber analysts that are the GSOC type analysts. And then I have managers and directors and senior directors, et cetera. So I said, okay, great. Analyst 1, Analyst 2, Analyst 3, Engineer 1, Engineer 2, Engineer 3, lead, principal engineer, architect, manager, senior manager. And spread that across in that way. And then I said, okay, then I have director, senior director, deputy CISO. I made it an official title, an official role, and then you know, my role, and I even layered in a VP role in case I get to bring in any VPs that work for me. So in laying that out, then I presented it to the teams and said, this is your career path, you know. And if you look at the pay scales, all of those career paths, we have level, I think it's grade 12 through 18. All of those career paths, whichever one you're on, you can go 12 to 18 and never be a manager, or you can go 12 to 18 and be a manager. So you have your options there like that. Then the next thing I did was, it's interesting that doing that, I then renamed all the titles to match the new taxonomy, which everybody loved, and then I found that some of the pay grades, there was disparity in the pay grades across the team. So I had like somebody that had a quote manager title, but was getting paid as a level 2 analyst. And I don't know how it happened. I kind of don't care. So that called out a couple of disparities, which I immediately then went to HR and said, this is a disparity. We need to do an equity adjustment. We did the equity adjustment, got that approved. January 16th, they were getting the money they should get. Now, I had to find that money. So don't, you know, I had to like finesse that money from someplace else, but I finessed it from the roles I didn't backfill. So that's why I was holding those in my pocket so I could use them later.
Yeah,
So.
yeah, and it's an interesting conversation because you see it even if you just go out and look at some of the positions out there, there's no consistency.
Right.
You can have the same title and they do completely different things. It's because it's really I mean, and I'm not picking on HR departments, but if you leave it up to your HR department, they're going to go try to find a resource somewhere, and you as a CISO are not really going to know what resource it is they're using because there's not a standard resource that says this is what an analyst does, this is what an engineer does, this is what an architect does, and you see those roles going any which way, all the way up to CISO.
Well,
if
some
you
of
pull
it
up
is
two,
size too.
that's true. But if you pull up a CISO role, if you go do it right,
God.
you have CISOs configuring firewalls, and then you have CISOs who are,
Well, real
running
quick, let's
risk
talk about how the
programs.
CISO
It's
role
completely
evolved,
different.
remember? If you look back at the history, we didn't have anybody that really called themselves a CISO until about 1998. You know, I think it was
Steve
Bank of
Katz.
America. It was Bank of America or Capital One or
it's like a
Citi or
Goldman
somebody.
Sachs, I thought.
Somebody, I don't remember what it was. Anyway, so you're less than 25 years into this deal. And
it's
so
young, that's why.
what really happened though is the big companies, I'll just draw the line at $1 billion. Billion and above, man, they embraced it right away. A lot of those are financial institutions. And when did PCI come out? 2007, 8, 9, give or take, whenever PCI came out. Guess what PCI said? You must have a named information security officer, okay? So then anybody $1 billion and below, especially that didn't have that already, started scrambling around looking for, oh my God, we have 3 network security engineers that report to IT, and we have a compliance person that reports to internal audit or something like that. So they looked to the network security engineers and they went, you're doing our firewall rules, right? So you have our perimeter, so we're going to make you our CISO.
Yeah.
Now, I love a person that takes advantage of that those CISOs, the smart ones, branded themselves that way, and they stayed for 2 years with that CISO title, and then they parlayed that from a less than $1 billion company. Then maybe they went from 100 million, they parlayed it to 500 million, and 2 years later they parlayed it to over $1 billion. And now all of a sudden, when you're in the over $1 billion, you have a bit of a team, 10, 15, 20 people-ish, whatever. You're no longer just a 1 or 2 person shop. So that was an amazing thing they did. But it also left us, frankly, with lots of CISOs that did not have business executive experience to understand how that really should work, build programs. They hadn't had to build programs and things like that.
Yeah.
That's not a criticism, that's just a fact.
No, it's back to what we were saying earlier. You start out as a tactician and work your way up. So let's go back to when you started at Brinks and talk high level, your 90-day plan. We've heard about the people and that challenge. What, conceptually, what was your plan going into this role? What was the framework you used? What were the standards? Tell us a little about that.
Well, we're NIST, CSF, but I hate to oversimplify, but frankly, I'm a believer that everything in life we do is about gap analysis. And if you can find an example where it's not, I'd love to hear it because I haven't found one. I want to go out to dinner. Okay, well, that was what you want to do. Where am I? I'm at home. That's where you are. How do I get there? I got to find a route to get there. Maybe I got to make reservations, whatever. So it's all about where are we, where we're going, and what's in the middle. How do you get there? So that's an oversimplification, but that's really all you do. So day 2, my strategic plan was basically, I got to write the people. I got to make sure the people are right. Going into 2023, we have a bunch of software that, as everybody knows, most cyber programs have a lot of semi-shelfware. And so the first thing we did was look at utilization of software. And if it wasn't being utilized 80% of the time, or we weren't using 80% of the function or more, then I'm not getting value out of it. In fact, I'd rather be closer to 90% at least. So we look at those and then we make a decision. This year we have to make a decision. Can we replace it? Do we need to split the function up, buy something less expensive that does the 50%, and then look at how we deal with the other 50% some other way? So that's that whole rationalization process. The other challenge for me was and many people have this, through acquisition, we brought in lots and lots of companies. In our case, it meant different countries. I forget what the number is, but it's there's many, it's like 90 actual countries, but we really function primarily in like 53 or something like that. So there's this disparate, not only organization and tools, we have people in countries that came over, they were CISO of the $100 million acquisition that we just made as a $5 billion company. Well, they were a CISO, so they still feel like they're a CISO, and they have their kind of realm right here, and I get it. So I have to figure out a way to merge all of that together. It doesn't necessarily mean integration, but it does mean I have to organizationally let them know it's my standards, the Brink standards, the global corporate standards and policies. And, oh shoot, look what I did. I'm fiddling with it, sorry guys. And with that, they need to follow those. Now, following those doesn't mean that I name the brand of the tool necessarily, but visibility and monitoring are key. That's number 1. I've got 1 and 2. I've got to have visibility, I've got to have monitoring. That's non-negotiable for the most part. Now, after that, it's, do you have a tool that does X control? And if they say, yes, we do, we have XYZ product. I'm going to be like, okay, how does XYZ product compare to our corporate product? They're functionally equivalent. Great, have a good day. I don't care. As long as I can see it and I can monitor it, I don't care what the brand name on it is, as long as they're functionally equivalent. Now, if they say we have nothing or it's functionally not equivalent, now we have to have a discussion about, let's install ours. And if they balk at it, then we have the discussion about, hey, that's cool. Let's work on an exception to policy, and we'll risk assess your exception to policy. And oh, by the way, because you're talking about a major control, I'm going to need your country president and the CEO to sign off on this stuff. So, because I'm not signing off on it, and I doubt my CIO would. So if you want to accept the risk, have at it. As long as I can see it and monitor it, at least I can semi-protect it. At least I'll know about it when it happens. So that's the basic. So there's that. So rationalization, the organization, the team, and business engagement. I will, stand up and say very straightforward that I believe the reason I was the candidate for the job, the finalist and got the job, was because I'm a business CISO. I've been building business information security programs for years. I've been going out with sales teams. I promote the idea of the CISO should go on sales pursuit, should go on account management, should be the face of sales, part of the face of sales, especially if you're in a B2B environment. B2C, we can't talk about that, but B2B, if you're going out and trying to sell something to your business customers, why wouldn't you take your CISO with you? Because they're going to turn around and third-party assure you. So why not build that relationship early and use it to sell? I think that's the reason. They wanted somebody that had that ability to build relationships with the business and to forward the idea that it's a business value, it's not an overhead. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's get personal.
Oh, okay.
Okay,
Yeah.
You ready?
Yeah.
Okay, so military background.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us just briefly about that and how that influenced your role as a CISO.
So I'm a little OCD, a little type A, I get bored real quick and stuff like that. So I got out of high school, decided I'd try to go to college. Yeah, that didn't go so well. It was same town. I was still partying with the same folks I partied with in high school. I always say I graduated high school in 3 years because I had 185 days absence in 3 years because I could sit in class or go read the book on my own and go take the test and get an A, and I didn't have to show up, and all that stuff. So after a year of floundering around, I came home one day and told my dad, who did 33 years in the Army, I said, I joined the Army. He's like, great. He said, when do you leave? I said, Saturday. He said, okay, that's cool. Did you need a ride or can you get there yourself? Okay, I guess I'm going. So joined the Army, enlisted in the Army, was a PFC in the Army, did all I was a field artilleryman, I was a cannon crewman, so I humped ammo around for big guns. Did that for a little bit and got the opportunity. The first sergeant offered me one day, I was walking by and I was doing nothing, which is a bad idea. And he called me in the office and said, you've got a life decision to make. He said, boy, you can either be the operations, the S3 operations driver, which they're in the field all the time, or you can be the battalion mail clerk. I went, battalion mail clerk, first sergeant. He said, good choice. So I flew in and out to the field on the helicopter and delivered mail and delivered paychecks, and awesome job. About a year and a half in, I qualified for OCS, went to officer candidate school. They put me back in the artillery. I did reconnaissance survey, so I was a surveyor. Had a team to do that, and then was a fire directions officer and a field artillery forward observer and all kinds of stuff, and then figured out there's not much demand for that in the civilian world. At least not that I've found. Maybe in the, dark places there's some demand for that. So I branch transferred to finance corps. And I was one of the early people to go into information security when they made that a specialty for officers back in the dark ages. I wrote the command operating budget for the 1st Cav Division down in Fort Hood using an old 8088 PC with DBase 1. It didn't have a 1 on it, by the way. It just was called DBase. Adam Green, I had Adam Green's book laid out, and I figured out DBase, and I wrote this command operating budget with DBase. But there was no such thing as print drivers at that time, except with Lotus 123. Lotus 123 had print drivers. So I ported, extract, transform over to Lotus 123, and that was my print driver, and I'd print it out on the old green bar paper and send it down to the units so that they could.
Green bar, yeah.
Yeah. So that was and then eventually I got out. So.
All right, and it influences you to this day?
It does, because that was kind of my first dipping my toe into even technology. I did it in college. I tried to do it in college. Back then, the big new career was to be a CPA with a tech background. And I was like, man, I just don't want to sit there and count stuff all day like that. So I started doing technology with minors in accounting, and it just didn't happen. So
there's 3 other things I want to cover with
Sure.
you. And we're running short on time because I want to save time for questions.
Yeah.
One is your pilot.
Yes, I'm a pilot and flight instructor, and actually fly. I don't anymore because of just time, but I flew contract jets, citation jets. Yeah.
Okay. I knew you were a pilot. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. So I'm a flight instructor, single engine, multi-engine, and instrument. Yeah.
My brother's a pilot. He flies
Yeah.
charter planes,
Oh, yeah,
and I
yeah.
know there's a lot of precision to that. Does that precision help you in what
It does,
what you
and
do as a
there's
CISO?
a lot of cool techniques, and I've done some talks and articles on this too that I learned as a pilot. And actually I got into flying because I was burned out when I had my company, and I was doing technology, doing programming and integration, year 2K stuff, Y2K stuff right before that. And I was so burned out, and I'm driving down the street in a daze one day on Addison Road, and there was a big sign that said, "Learn to fly, $99. And I went, I went in, and I had my private license in about 40 days, and then I flew 450 hours that year, took 6 check rides, and got all my certifications. So I get a little OCD on that and kind of focused in. So yeah, that was that.
Excellent. The other thing is,
I'm sorry?
we had a shared connection when we first met.
Yes,
It was
yes.
not necessarily because of cybersecurity. It was because of martial arts. We're both practitioners, enthusiasts, and we both teach.
Yeah.
So this is like, I don't know, 2 years ago we were on a show together where we talked about
Yes.
the comparison of cybersecurity to martial arts, because there's a lot of overlap. I mean, it's a combat, and you're training for combat, but just briefly tell us a little bit of how that's influenced the way you think as a CISO.
Oh, definitely. So I practice and train now Aikido. I did Taekwondo, I've done Kung Fu, and now I do Aikido. And it's all about energy work. And so learning this idea of yin and yang has been crucial in dealing with confrontation. So if somebody is raising their voice at you, guess what? It doesn't do any good to raise your voice, because it's just yang against yang. You're just butting up against each other. Everything's in balance. So when somebody raises their voice, you should get quieter, because you're listening now. And that will let them fizzle that yang energy, and then eventually they will flip over to yin energy. And then now's your chance to come in and talk about what you want to talk about. So a very good confrontational thing. I also teach a concept, especially to kids and big adults, big guys. They don't know their own strength, and they want to do everything with muscle and with fervor like that. So when I teach somebody to throw somebody down on the ground because they're defending themselves, I tell them, put that person on the ground as if it was a child. Because the best way to de-escalate a situation is if somebody came at you and now they're looking up at you and they're not hurt, they just have no idea how they got there. I mean, that's it. They're kind of done, because what are you going to do? If you try and fight that, again, you're yang against yang, you're just fighting it. So instead, move their energy, put them on the ground. Works in business too. Move their energy, put them on the ground, they look up and they go, why did I just agree to that? It's like, hey, it's not my problem, you agreed, right?
In our conversation, we found there was a lot of correlation between the two, because there's a lot of concepts, but I think one of the biggest ones we talked about was having multiple layers of defense.
Yes.
And in our martial arts training, you never just meet one for one. It's always multiple different things that you do in defense before you retaliate.
Right.
And it's a lot the same, and the concepts of training are very similar. We do tabletop exercises, and those you prepare as realistically as close to realistic as possible to prepare yourself.
Yeah,
for
old
that
military
event.
concept, train the way you're going to fight. Yeah, period.
Exactly, and it's all the same. So last point, and then we'll take questions. You reached out to me, I don't remember, a couple months ago, and you said we might be related.
Yeah. So I have kind of on and off done genealogy research for, 30 years or so. I probably have 500 or 600 known ancestors on my charts and stuff. But you get back into some really weird branches, and they get really diverse. And I'm back into the 1700s in Europe, and it's kind of, I've reached the end of it. But I'll set it aside for 2 or 3 years, and then all of a sudden I'll get excited about it, and I'll do it for a year or so, and then I'll set it aside. I got I think it was a DNA thing that prompted that said, you're related to Belanger. It was somebody, but it wasn't David Belanger, but it was Belanger. And I went, I only know 2.
Yeah. Yeah.
So.
Well, it's interesting. My last name, Belanger, is Old French for warrior, which ironically, my ancestors fled the French Indian War to the mountains of Canada.
There you go.
Yeah. So what does Benoit mean?
Well, Benoit, actually, in the original form, it was hyphenated. It was Petit Benoit.
Okay.
It was a little b, and it means little saint.
Oh. Okay.
Yeah, I'll never
Far
live up
from
to
it
that
now,
one. Yeah,
right?
I'll never live up to that one. Yeah.
All right, let's take some questions. Who has questions for Pat? Yes. Do we have a mic? Yeah. There's a gentleman right over here. We got 9 minutes.
Oh, cool. We're doing good.
Yeah.
So, I kind of want to continue on what you were talking just now about
Genealogy?
and so how secure is that information to go and do your DNA and me, 23andMe, and then somebody?
I will say I don't do it.
Yeah.
I don't give them my DNA.
So I'll answer that by saying that, somebody came to me once, or I went to somebody once and I said, hey, can you give me this person's mailing address? I need to send them something. And they were like, let me check. And they came back and said, well, they really don't like to give out their address. And I said, don't worry about it. I already got it. To me, it's kind of the same. I know there's all this deal about you don't want to put your personal information out, as you want to protect it where you can and stuff. But in the end, if somebody really wants that, they can get it. And I don't know, what's the worst thing could happen if they got my DNA? I guess they could like pin a crime on me or something, maybe.
I was gonna say, as long as you don't commit a crime, I think.
Yeah,
you're
but as long as I keep Dave around, so I have a viable.
Patsy?
Yeah. No, I was with Dave. He'll tell you. Then we're good. So I maybe I'm too cavalier about it, but I kind of look at it. What's the worst can happen? Do I still protect my stuff? Sure. But am I going to go crazy worrying about it? No, because I think there are bigger fish out there for them to chase after.
You could always keep it, just make sure you always put your stuff in something that's extremely secure and will never get hacked, like LastPass.
Yeah.
Well, I think my concern is, what if they use it for something else?
Right.
Well, yeah.
Anything being telling you.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah, they probably
and
are.
if it's DNA, I'd have to ask, what are they going to use it for? There's probably things they could use it for. If it's my name and stuff like that, they're probably and my personal information, they're probably going to try and use it to do identity theft or something. I keep all my credit cards except the primary card I use locked all the time. And so I also keep fraud alerts on all of my credit reports all the time. Pain in the butt if you ever really want to do something with credit. You got to turn it off, and it's all are frozen. So
Keep
you
it
do what
frozen.
you can.
Next question's over here.
Yeah. So I've been in consulting for most of my career, so this is kind of new to me.
Gun
but-
for hire.
Yeah. How do you mentioned like MSSPs and stuff. How do you make the business decision of, hey, I should hire this person internally versus outsourcing it to like an MSSP? What's the, factors there?
Most of the time for me, it has to do with that philosophy I have that if it's a what I would call a factory task, a fairly rote set of stuff that's a well-defined skill that can be well-defined in a playbook, and it's a repetitive. I use the term factory instead of BAU because I hated the term BAU, but factory process. It's over and over and over again. They're doing the same thing. Now, there may be nuances to it. That, to me, is a prime candidate to outsource somehow. Outsource could be outsourced to a different team in the company, or it could be outsourced out of the company. But that's my number one factor. In other cases, somebody would have to bring a really compelling money story and give up my control story. Because in some cases it is about having control and visibility and monitoring that you might not otherwise have. In some cases you may want to keep those. Like here's my example. When I build an insider risk program, I'm not going to outsource that because there's too much that's intimate to the company that you have to have access to and be visible to, that I want to give that all out under an NDA. So that's an example where I probably would never outsource that. You know? So does that answer your question? Or?
Next question.
Any major projects you plan for 2023?
Yeah, you know, and I'll apologize to vendors in advance. You know, most vendors that are contacting me cold, well, first of all, they have to understand if you've contacted me cold, you're one of 1,000 or something like that. So the better way to get to me would be to go through one of these events and we share a drink or we have lunch or whatever, and then you might have a chance.
You have to play the long game.
You got to play the long
with
game, yeah. But to your question there, that means that I'm telling all the vendors that contact me, even the ones that I know, I'm happy to go have a drink or have lunch with you or something, or have a call with you. But understand, I'm not even looking at new projects until after Q2. We have enough on our plate just to do those high-level strategic things we talked about. You know, extend the deployment, bring in the team all together, write the team we have. You know, the other big project for us is procedures. Every factory process, procedures on the front end, metrics on the back end. It's a factory process. I want it in service now so that I can transactionalize it where I can, and I can track that stuff so I can get more people because we have so many transactions. So that's where our focus is. So there won't be new projects unless something just pops up.
And cybersecurity, there's a global cyber crime epidemic right now, and CISOs are being constantly targeted by third parties selling them cybersecurity wares. And we get, I don't know how many you get. I get hundreds, maybe 1,000 a month of new contacts trying to connect and try to.
The best social engineering I like is, and it's happened for a while, I'm sure, but it became more visible in the last couple of years, is call up a CISO and say, hey, would you be interested in an opportunity to be the global CISO at Brink's? Well, yeah. Okay, well, let's talk. I'll have a recruiter call you. Send me your resume. Here's the address. I'll have a recruiter call you. And then they have somebody else call you back and they start chatting you about, well, what have you done in the past? What are you doing now? How do you feel about your company? Man, that's just research.
You get fished.
And you just got fished. Yeah, you just got fished.
Yeah, the other thing about the role of CISO is every CISO I know has a roadmap that goes out several years, and I already have an idea in my head of which particular products I want to use.
Yeah.
In some cases, I have used products from people who I met at a conference years, but that's why I say play the long game, because I'll meet somebody at a conference, and then 2 years down the road, they'll end up on my roadmap because I got to know that person. And problem I think with that a lot is a lot of the people who I know, some of them are here today, and I love visiting with them. They don't stay at the company long enough.
Yeah.
Those roles, I think there's a lot of turnover, and so you'll get somebody. I know a few who have been at their companies for multiple years, and I've been through those cycles of my roadmap. But if you change companies and you go to a new company, I might know you, but I don't know your product, and so then you're starting from scratch. As much as I like you, so it's a tough thing, because I would say most CISOs already have a preconceived notion of which products they want to use.
Well, and vendors need to look at both sides of the coin too. Too often, sales folks will come in and try and sell their product, and they're trying to get into your company. They're here to get into your company. You know what? Build a relationship, because 8 times out of 10, I didn't buy from the people I know because I just didn't have a need for that product, or contracting, I didn't have a way to do it or whatever. But that's two times I could do that. The other 8 times, I probably referred them to somebody though.
Yeah.
And I took them to somebody else. Yeah. So you have to play, you got to be aware of both sides. So the network is not just to get into the company, it's to maybe get referred somewhere else.
Okay, cuz we need to pack it up.
All right, I appreciate it.
Thank you for your time.
Yep.
Thanks everybody.
Thanks
appreciate
everyone.
your time.
Yep. Good deal.
Good job.
Good job.